All right, as everybody's kind of coming in here, we'll just let you know, just welcome. So I'm Ryan Lerman. I'm with the University of Minnesota Extension. I'm with, I work out of Rice and Steele County offices. Ag production systems is my background. And then I'm kind of hosting here today with Teresa DeMars out of the Rice Soil and Water Conservation District office. And then Barb Bolan's going to be here too to give a talk. And she's with Wild Ones. She's a Southeast Minnesota chapter. So as everybody's kind of coming in here, just if you have questions, just use that little Q&A question thing and put your questions in there. If we start putting too much into the chat, it might be hard for me to kind of catch everybody, and I might miss some of your questions and stuff like that. So yeah, if we could just use the Q&A, that'd be great. And then I'm going to turn it over to you guys to kick it off here.
Hello, hello everybody. I'm Teresa DeMars with the Rice Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'm joined here by Barb Bolan. She's also on my screen because we are having a little technical difficulty with computers today, but I think we got it figured out and it should be a great presentation. So I'm just going to start out briefly here. I'm going to share my screen, and just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. Let's see. Got to get this moved here. Oops. Give me 1 second to start the slideshow. All right, can you all see my screen? Can you see my screen, Ryan?
Yeah, I got your screen.
Okay, great. I work with the Rice Soil and Water Conservation District, but I'm also here today representing the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization. And this organization was formed back in 2020. Here is a picture of the Cannon River watershed, which covers 6 different counties. And it also represents 6 different soil and water conservation districts, as well as the North Cannon River Watershed Management Organization and the Bell Creek Watershed District. So historically, counties used to plan and come up with a plan to protect and improve water quality. And in the late back around 2016, they started the process of trying to think of things on a watershed level. So a lot of planning, these counties and districts got together, and eventually in 2020, they started to plan water conservation on a watershed level. So the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization was born. A little bit about the watershed. There's almost 1 million acres total in the watershed. About half of that is ag land, and about 10% of it lies within a metro area. There's about 800 linear miles of streams and water courses, and that includes 2 main rivers, the Straight River down that flows through Steele County and into Rice County, and then also the Cannon, which flows through Goodhue and Rice County. Some of the things that the Joint Powers Organization is doing to try to help local water quality, one of the things we're trying to do is to fix erosion. We have all kinds of erosion in the watershed, gully erosion, wind erosion. And so we are working with landowners to try to fix that problem. In this picture, there's a couple different practices that we've created cost share programming around. For example, the grassed waterway and the water and sediment control basin in the top of the picture. Those are structural practices, and we provide landowners cost share to try to construct those things to control erosion. And then we also have incentive programs for farmers to plant cover crops and to do conservation tillage. And those practices help to protect and cover the soil so that we can reduce erosion on the ground. Another thing that we do is we do outreach and education events, again, with farmers and rural landowners to teach them about those different practices and the opportunities to implement them. And then we've also done outreach to lakeshore homeowners to try to implement natural shoreline restorations. Another thing that we've been doing is trying to improve the water quality of our local lakes through a couple different things. We've done a natural shoreline survey to see what the condition of our shorelines are. In some lake areas, we've done septic inventories. Septic systems are another issue that can affect local water quality. And it's not just around lake shores, but really across the watershed. If your septic is failing, that can have an impact on local water quality. So we're working with landowners to improve those. We are developing lake management plans with the assistance of the Board of Water and Soil Resources and Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to improve our local lakes. And we're also working with monitoring and testing our different lake and river resources. And as I mentioned before, we have an incentive program that provides cost share assistance for doing natural shoreline. And this also not only protects the shoreline and controls erosion, but it also helps our local pollinators. So I think this is a great spot where I can turn it over to Barb and get PowerPoint up here. Okay. Oh, okay. I think it's up. So we will change chairs.
Thank you, and thank you for accommodating my failing computer.
So right now what I'm seeing, guys, is just your PowerPoint that you just got done with, Teresa. I'm not seeing Barb's PowerPoint right now.
Oh, it said screen sharing is paused. If you get rid of those again, right here. Maybe stop share and restart.
Share. Okay, how about now?
Yep, we got it now. You guys are good to go.
Great.
Perfect. Okay. Well, hello to everyone. And so I'm assuming you're here because you like monarchs, and you know, if you throw out some milkweed and pretty flowers, you're likely to get some monarchs coming to visit. And then they disappear in the winter, just like a lot of people here like to go south for the winter, the monarchs go. So I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on some of the details that we don't normally understand about the monarchs or milkweeds and how to make them happy and hopefully more successful and keep them safe.
Here, we'll try.
Guys, trying to get it.
Okay, are you seeing it now?
Oh, it's not over here.
All right, so right now what you're sharing is like the whole PowerPoint program. So I mean, we can see the slide, but we can also see your slide menu off to the left too. So
okay, so let's hit from the beginning maybe there. Resume slideshow. Sorry guys, we're having a little technical
Maybe we
difficulty. Might have to just even stop sharing and start sharing again. That little red button there. Now is it stop sharing? Okay, yep.
Yep.
We're gonna try starting it again here.
Okay,
It's not,
we might just have to do it with this.
Yeah, and you got a good view of it. We can
Okay.
just kind of see what you're coming up next. But yeah, I mean it's
Okay.
a good picture. We can see everything. If that's the way it's gonna work, we can just do it
okay.
that way.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's the program, not my computer that's jinxed here. So some of the things that I want to talk about that you may not have heard about are white spot value, self-medicating, migration culling, self-incompatibility, options and diversity, and the foot trap. And
I
let's
would
see,
click right over here.
it didn't go, did it? Okay. So first off, if we meet the monarchs, the genus is Janus, and the species of our monarch is Ipsipus. Lives in North America, host plant milkweed, it migrates. The International Unit for Conservation of Nature and Canada have considered it to be endangered, but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has not yet, though they might by the end of the year. Our monarch has some cousins. The southern monarch looks most like it from South American monarchs, and there's others around the world. For the most part, that doesn't matter to us. Buddies and things, sometimes they can compare the differences between and okay.
So we're having just a hair bit of audio trouble on your guys' end. I think Barb, if you kind of sit back a little bit from the screen a little more, I think
Okay.
I think that might be doing it. I don't know if it's just like you're blocking. I don't know how it's working, but it seems like right now, I think if you want to try talking, we'll try it again here.
Okay, so tell me if this is going okay.
Yeah, yep, that sounds good. So
The monarch caterpillars eat or store away the toxins that are called cardiac glycosides or phenolides in milkweed. They then become toxic. And monarchs are tolerant of moderate levels of these toxins, but they're poisonous to a lot of predators. And the monarchs become toxic also when they eat them. And if you look at the picture on the right, you'll see all the orange on the stem of the swamp milkweed. And those are the oleander aphids that were such a problem this year. And they're obviously not susceptible to the toxins. The giant swallowtail is feeding on the flowers of the milkweed, and that's fine too. They don't have a problem with that. Monarchs see more colors than we do. In fact, they see supposedly the broadest spectrum of colors in the animal kingdom, and they see UV light. That could be why they like such a wide, diverse source of nectar options. They like to fly around and see what they like. And so we should give them lots of colors. Males aren't territorial, but they do chase their rivals away. So here's a habitat tip. We need to feed, of course, but also a colorful variety of nectar plants. The monarch females search for milkweeds of their choice to lay their eggs. And by that, they'll fly around looking for what species or plant of milkweed they want. They really like their choices. Another thing they do is they'll come up to the leaf and they'll dance around with their feet a little bit, their antennas, even their head touching the leaf, backing off. And they do this little bit of if they want to lay their egg on or not. Is it the right species? Disseminated? Are they already? So if you can see the picture on the right, I'm not sure if you guys can see it well or not, but you can see the abdomen has curved up under the leaf, and then it'll shoot out a little bit of glue and put the egg and stick it in the glue. So they typically only lay one egg per plant, but they may lay more eggs per plant if they're crowded or stressed. And sometimes another female will lay an egg on the same plant. And one of the reasons is the monarch caterpillars are going to eat a whole lot of milkweed food. So if you have 2 or 3 caterpillars on there, their success chances go down because they don't have enough food, or they have to move and find another host plant for them. So typically one plant. If you see more, they might be crowded or stressed. University of Hawaii study that showed that you get about 22% more eggs if the milkweed is mixed in with nectar plants. There again, the mother need to provide food for the caterpillar and later on for the new adults. So nature has said we like things mixed up. An egg has about a 10% chance of becoming an adult, which sounds a little freaky to most people, but consider where they are in the food chain. They're at the very wrong food chain. So they have the other 90% have been designated by nature to help the next critters on the rungs as they go to survive too. So there's a lot of up to 500 eggs or more even per adult. And so it's not surprising that they have low success rate. The chrysalis is hung in a place that's safe. They need, usually it's not on milkweed. Sometimes it is, but it can be on surrounding. It can be on structure. I've seen them on the wheel wells of cars that haven't been used for a long time. They'll put them pretty much anywhere, but they do like a safe place for them. This next part, the jays and chrysalis tend to face away from the light. I only put that in there because it was students that determined that, and they're from Rochester, so they're close by. So that's a tip to them. So habitat tips out of this is the milkweeds should be interspersed with nectar plants, and we need a safe place for the chrysalises to be. Let's see. Look at quick. Another thing about monarchs is that all stages can die if they stay over 95 degrees Fahrenheit for long. So they get most of their water from plants, but they will puddle or huddle around a little mud puddle if they can find one in drier times. The plant on the right, the tall one, is called a cup plant, and the nectar is great for adults, but if you notice, they downward, rain comes along, the rain comes down the leaves, and the bottom of the leaf is attached tightly to the stem of the plant and forms a little cup, and that holds water. So these are great plants to have out in the prairie because they can give the monarchs, other caterpillars, bees, a little place to get a little moisture when things start getting dry. And they have big leaves too, and that helps. So the monarchs can't handle a lot of rain. They can take little sprinkles, but a heavy rain, they can't fly. If they get too wet, they'll fall to the ground and they can get stuck on the ground and not be able to get up and fly away again. So they need some shelter, like dead trees, shrubs, grasses, large plants, large leafed plants, such as the cup plant, rock structures or something, rock piles or something that can protect them when the weather gets bad. Sometimes they'll even go inside the cavities of dead trees for protection from the weather. Plus at night, they rest or sleep, but their eyes are open, clinging to trees, shrubs, or plants. So we need to make sure we provide them habitat, some kind of shrubs, trees, something to get safe in. Plus they need cooler areas, shady area to get out of the sun in the hot days, and they need some kind of shallow water. Monarchs and migration, most of the Dana species are subtropical and don't migrate. North America, there's different populations. Those west of the Rockies migrate to California, not too far. The chart is from Xerxes and shows kind of the patterns that they go. And east of the Rockies to Mexico. Some stay in Florida all year long. Each population has its own nuances. It's just I saw something that I think it's like 37 or 8% of the monarchs from the east of the Rockies come from the Corn Belt area. So it's a pretty high percentage of them. So we need to do to keep ours safe. They started out as migrators, probably in Mexico. Some species became homebodies and others started moving north. And, whoop, it is open. And so this one shows the migration as the generation. Southbound, it's one generation, and it's really critical that that female is in reproductive diapause so she can go down there and not stay up here and lay eggs. And one generation makes the trek all the way down, but in the north, they start out in about March, excuse me, and they have one generation in southern US, and then they start coming up closer. The fourth generation has to be ready to migrate as butterflies, and those are the great-great-grandbabies of last year's migration. So nobody's telling them what to do. It's all programmed in them. So they can travel up to 300 miles a day, 10 hours a day, and they soar and or glide to reduce the energy used. And there's some things that have been different. They have a collagen gene that helps them use their muscles more efficiently and reduce the oxygen use. But to make it, the caterpillars have to store up extra food, excuse me, and the adults have to refuel along the way. Healthy monarchs can actually gain weight on the trip, which really surprised me. And these migrating adults can live 7 to 9 months or so, whereas the local monarchs can only live a few weeks. So some major changes in behaviors and physiology have to happen. They follow the milkweed north in the spring. We need plenty of nectar for travelers on both ends and hopefully all the way down. And you've heard of some of these pollinator corridors that help provide food for them all the way down. And that's really cool. Now, some interesting things. Some migration sectors are originally more females made it down. Prior to 1985, 53% of the monarchs in the roosts in Mexico were female. Since 2000, only 43% are. It's also been shown that monarchs with larger white spots on their wing margins are more successful. And real critical is that they stay in reproductive diapause. If they come out of that diapause, they're done. Also, ones non-infected with the OE, Ophriocistus electrocera, and I won't remember that word, but non-infected with that, and they have a much better survival rate. And one thing about migration they have discovered also is that the females have smaller wings and flight muscles, but they're thicker wings and they're more sturdy and more efficient. So more of them should still be making it down there, but they aren't. And is it because they're coming out of reproductive diapause? Is it because of infections? There's no clear answer yet on what's going on. So to look into these a little bit more, a study in Georgia found that larger white spots were found on successful migrants, migrating generations, and even migrating species. Ours have the largest white spots, and then the middle picture there on the left is the southern, and that has little smaller spots, and the Queens and Jamaicans have much smaller spots. They believe that the large white spots mixed with black may be more aerodynamic, cooling, reduced drag. They're even saying that they may be able to take some of this to help us create more efficient flying machines and things. So it's not really a tip for anything, but I just found it fascinating. And this is where some of those cousins helped them with their studies too. Now, one of the critical factors for migration preparation, and this is something we could make sure we obey, final summer caterpillars need cooler temps, shorter days, and there's a lot of people that get concerned the monarchs, the milkweed is dying in the late summer. We need to get them some fresh young milkweed. They need the senescing plants to become migrating adults. If one of these 3 factors is missing, the females that emerge may not be in diapause or they may not stay in it. They come out, fresh milkweed is available in the late summer. The females get all excited and say, hey, I can have more babies. They mate, they lay eggs. Unfortunately, then they die. And the eggs probably do not have time to complete life cycle and get down to Mexico. So they die as well. Or on the journey, if they're not really in good diapause, they can see tropical milkweed in southern US. And again, say, wow, look, I can breed again. And they don't make it to Mexico. So it's important that we only use native milkweed and do not mow down common milkweed to allow new shoots to grow in late summer. We want no fresh milkweed available late in summer, not in pots or plantings or anything. Keep to the natural stages. One thing here is maybe in some of the road ditch mowing, this should be considered because common is the biggest thing in road ditches. And if they mow it in early August, quite possibly you're going to have a lot of late shoots coming up that are fresh and may trick the monarchs again. Something that I think needs a little more reviewing. So the OE infection is a protozoan parasite that infects the monarchs. It's carried on the thorax of the adults, and they'll have millions of spores on them. When they breed, when they fly, when they shed some of these spores. Female, or the caterpillars, I mean, will feed on it, and they're a host for the OE. So the OE will reproduce inside of the caterpillar. and that's the only way it increases. Some infected adults are distorted and die right away. Some are just weaker. So migration weeds out the unfit or sick ones, and that's the migration culling. Native milkweeds in nature will die out, and next spring you get them back again with new, healthy, non-contaminated plants for the monarchs. But exotic milkweeds can keep growing longer and they spread the infection more. So we want to stay clear of the exotic milkweeds. Even up here, it's best not to use them. Less OE has been detected in the monarchs in Mexico than in northern populations. There again, migration culling has gotten rid of a lot of the ones that can't survive. But non-migrant populations can have really high levels. In fact, some of the ones feeding on exotic milkweed have 100% infected caterpillars. So you think this beautiful plant is helping the caterpillars because it's so nice and pretty and keeps growing, but it's really killing them. Another big factor that we can affect is crowding. Crowding increases physiological stress and susceptibility to diseases and spreads OE faster. And OE has raised dramatically in the past few decades too, and they're trying to figure out why. But again, we need to space out our milkweeds and only use native milkweeds, no exotics, provided as nature intended. But it is really important in crowding to make sure that they have plenty of space. These monarchs like to go around and look for things and have their choices. And so there are ways to fight OE for the monarchs. They practice this thing called self-medicating. Some milkweeds have higher levels of toxins and can reduce the OE levels somewhat in the caterpillars. So an OE infected female prefers to lay her eggs on a species with higher levels of toxins. That's one reason they fly around looking for their milkweeds. Those toxins are consumed by the caterpillar and it reduces the infection. However, caterpillars grow better with lower levels of toxins in their system. So it's kind of a, this is an advantage and this is a loss. And if we use it all the time, you could get resistant OE. Most studies show that common has a much lower level of the toxins than swamp. So if your caterpillar or your butterfly is seeking out swamp, it could be because it has some infection. The exotic one has the highest level of toxins, but at least, but it lasts longer and passes on more infections. So it still gets infected and then, or contaminated, and then the caterpillars can get it. So here again, provide multiple native milkweed species and options so they have the diversity that they need. Oops, uh-oh, what'd I do? Sorry, guys. I think I'm back.
Yeah.
I tried to move them.
Just go down one.
Okay. So there's more complex interactions too, and the soil water department here, conservation department, can tell you a lot more about these, but these mycorrhizal fungi are very important for healthy soils and essential for wild plants. They help with root development and especially phosphorus uptake. So it depends on the levels of the two, but you can increase the amount of toxins in milkweed, but milkweeds have different reactions. So they're still studying a lot of this, but it does impact it. Adding too much phosphorus and or tilling hurt the fungi too. Plus, if you fertilize with nitrogen, you can increase the milkweed toxins to damaging level for monarchs. Caterpillars need nitrogen, but from a natural source. All of this is level view of it, but the bottom line is you want healthy soil, don't fertilize your milkweed, minimize or eliminate tilling in your native plants and your populations. You need that soil to be healthy. You need that fungi to help with the uptake of the natural fertilizer. Oh, okay, here we go. So if you look at these, can you tell which monarchs are infected? And you can read the answer right there. They are all infected. Some of them are obviously not going to make it. The one on the bottom right may survive, but it probably won't make the full journey of migration, but it will move around and spread the OE more. So it's really a lot. So in summary, for the monarch habitat, we need low temp, need low temp, short days, and senescing milkweeds to trigger the prep migration. This has to happen at the caterpillar stage. If they get fresh milk, they probably will not be successful staying in diapause. Monarchs practice self-medicating with a different OE or for OE with the different levels of toxins in the milkweed species. One critical one is they get stressed if they're too crowded. Of course, they roost or bivouac together on migration and when it's a storm or something, but when they're out there feeding or reproducing, they want space. High heat can be deadly to monarchs throughout their life cycle. They need safe refuges from the rain, the wind, the heat, night times, and they need a good, safe chrysalis. So, and we also get some pulled out, but they need the fresh milkweed in order to survive when they come back up. Meet the Asclepias, and their name for Greek god of medicine. Even though they have this toxin, they have had, or people have used the plants for controlling warts, for lung diseases, for stomach aches and things, but don't try it because these are cardiac glycoside toxins in there, and they can do a lot of damage to people. The levels do vary between species. And the flowers, as you see them, they all come in parts in fives. And the seed pods split open when they're ripe. And here's one that has the floss, and you can see ready to be dispersed by the wind. Oops, sorry. There we go. So there's over 200 species of milkweed in the world. 14 are native to Minnesota, though some people say 15. There's options for everything you want in a garden, different bloom times, everything. Roots are variable, and I found there's not a lot of literature on them. Some tell you that this type of milkweed has rhizomas, others say it's fibrous, so they vary. But a lot of milkweeds don't transplant very well. The roots can be deep tap ones or rhizomes or fibrous ropey ones. I think the rhizomous ones will transplant a little easier a lot of times, or the fibrous. The deep tap roots are tough. And they put a lot of their energy into developing roots at first. The common and the whorl spread by rhizomes, and they form clone colonies. And you probably know the common one can have huge clone colonies. And remember, these clone colonies are all one plant. So if you see a group of the common ones, 30 plantlets or whatever, but that is actually all one plant. And some, like the swamp one, are considered fibrous or ropey roots, but they send up clones as well. The nectar of milkweeds is desired by a lot of pollinators. As you can see, the leaf skipper is enjoying milkweed pollen or nectar. So landscape tips, consider roots. Many of these won't move easily. Pick your site wisely, and because it's likely to be there or not make it. And here are some of the Minnesota milkweed options. And I'll go into a little bit more on some of them, not all of them, but there's some you've probably never heard of and some that you may know very well. The common milkweed, and we all know that one. Apparently Linnaeus named it Syriaca because he thought it came from Syria, but it didn't, but that's how it got its name. The showy one in the middle has a lot of the same look as a common one, but it has bigger, fancier flowers, and it's not as aggressive. On the right, we have the poke. And that one's good because it's our shade-loving milkweed. It'll do good in some sunlight too, but it does like the shade. And then we have the swamp, also called the rose or the red, and that one likes it a little bit wetter. It's a beautiful one. Monarchs love it. Butterfly weed middle doesn't have the milky sap. It has some toxin, but it doesn't have the same milky sap, and it isn't quite as desirable to a lot of the monarchs. On the right, the Sullivans or Prairie, and you got to be careful with common names sometimes because there's another short green milkweed called the Prairie one too. So this is similar to the common, but it's less aggressive. It actually does cross with the common one even. And so all three of these are good ones in the garden. Then we move on. The whorled one, and you could see some of the orange butterfly weed behind it. And this one blooms a little bit later, so it can give nectar to other pollinators a little bit later in the season. And it's it spreads, but it's a very small, cute little plant. Purple one in the middle. This one's a little tougher on gardens. It's absolutely beautiful. We had it flower twice, and I forgot to mention one thing down at the fairgrounds planting. And neither time did it set seed because most likely it didn't have somebody else there to get to give pollen. And then the tall green one on the right, and that's another really pretty one. We have some in there, but it isn't flowering yet. It hasn't flowered yet. And what I didn't mention was most of these pictures are from things that we put in down at the Rice County Fairgrounds in a milkweed demonstration plot. And we worked with the Rice County Soil and Water Group, Teresa specifically here, and Southeast Minnesota Prairie Partners chapter, and tried to plant some of these different ones so people could get an idea of some other milkweeds for their gardens rather than just the common one. Milkweed pollination, the females and males are in the same flower. They're called perfect flowers, monoecious plants, because both sexes are on the same plant. One important thing is they're self-incompatible. They won't self-pollinate. Most of them won't. There's some that do a little bit. And that's why the purple one probably didn't set seed. It didn't have a pollinating buddy. So it did beautiful flowers, but no seed. And they also, a lot of bumblebees do the pollination and moths at night, but they also have sticky pollen that's packed into these little pollina pouches rather than the dry pollen that usually the bees pick up. So just remember, it's self-incompatible. You need more than one plant per species. So during the research, I learned that on the purple ones. Here is an example of the milkweed flower. And if you look off to the right, you'll see the pollina, and two pollina, and they're also called saddlebags sometimes by description, are hooked together and are called a pollinarium. This pollinarium is tucked down into the stigmatic slit on the corona of the milkweed. The nectar is hidden away up on the top here. And so their milkweeds also have their signature horn, and the horn is this part in the middle and the hood part. But if you look at this, you'll see all the 5 parts. They all have 5-part flowers. And now, so milkweed pollination, and this is where it gets kind of tricky for them. The pollinators are attracted to that sweet nectar smell of weed. And in fact, the common ones, supposedly their nectar is almost 100% sucrose. So things like it. Pollination, however, requires that a pollinator, a bee or something, is searching around for that nectar, and it accidentally slips a foot into the stigmatic, and they manage to get it out with the pollinarium intact and their foot intact. A lot of them lose their foot fighting to get out of it. Some never manage to get out of that little slit. And that pollinarium has to stay intact, and they have to go to a different plant of the same species, and not in that little clone, but a whole different plant. And again, get their foot stuck, that same foot with a pollinarium on it, into a stigmatic slit foot trap, and get it in there, manage to drop the basket outside and inside, and hopefully get their foot back out. And so it's, you think, how on earth would this be an efficient way to do things? But there you go. Bumblebees can travel only up to about 1,600 feet between flowers, honeybees up to a mile. The point for that is that you need to have the same plants within a reasonable distance of each other to make successful pollen. You'd want to be closer than the 1,600 feet, but you do have some distance. And here's a picture of the showy milkweed from down at the fair. And again, you can see the 5 parts. And you can see this little stigmatic slit. And that's what, when the bee is wandering around for nectar, it has to put its foot in that, get it stuck, get the basket out into another flower, and repeat that process. Up here, I believe, is an aphid line, and that's a lacewing larvae. And they eat aphids like crazy. So that's a good guy to have on there. And there were certainly a lot of aphids this year. Okay, so nectar plants for monarchs, and it's critical that nectar plants are available from early May through October freeze. You got migrators coming up and down. Remember that the monarchs really like colors. They have excellent color vision. It has to have a reason for having that vision. So they like a variety of colors and always something blooming. Natives are best. Not all cultivars work well, some do. I think a lot of us know in gardens, zinnias and tithonia are loved by the monarchs and they're not invasive. Planting nectar plants in drifts can help. That means like a big clump of them. But remember to spread your milkweeds within those nectar drifts. Cultivars have been developed to be what we want, but native plants have evolved to be what monarchs or the wildlife need. And that's why focusing on native plants is really important. Cultivars have been altered. Flowers can be altered or something, and they sometimes work just as well, sometimes they don't. But we like them, they're pretty. And if you're using cultivars, you want to avoid double flowered varieties if possible, because they're typically ones that don't work as well for the pollinators. And also verify, and this is critical, verify they're not invasive plants, or they may take over natural lands and squeeze out the native plants, including milkweeds, and that isn't helping much. We do a lot of cultivars, probably most people have cultivars in the garden, but just hopefully not invasive things like the Dame's Rocket or Queen Anne's Lace. So here's just a list of some of the nectar plants, and these are just a few of them. There's tons of them you can choose from. In the spring, there's some early things like wild geranium, but also there's a lot of shrubs that will flower in the spring that can offer the monarchs some hideouts and protection, as well as some nectar. In the summer, meadow blazing star is one of the hot ones that monarchs always attack. You might see half a dozen of them on a single flower stalk. And of course, we've got our cup plant in the late, but golden rods and asters are hugely important for the monarchs too. Here's just a few examples of some monarchs feeding on some different things, plus a planting of monarda that's interspersed with some milkweeds. And just to give them that mix, even though it was done more by accident. Okay, so putting it all together, habitats large and small, pretty much any site will work, but you do want healthy soils and you don't want to fertilize. Select areas free from insecticide use. Use multiple species of locally native milkweeds. You know, no exotics, but also no milkweeds from, you know, like Massachusetts or somewhere. We want our milkweeds. And you need multiple milkweeds per plant per species. No exotics, use the natives. The one place the natives are always best, but only use natives if your planting is going to be in a roadside ditch or a natural area or something. You do not want to risk having something like that and take over and become invasive. Select milkweed species that are fit for site. You saw there's different ones, wet, dry soils, all different kinds of things, tall, small. Space milkweed out. Don't crowd and stress the monarchs. They like that space. And if you look at them and you have multiple eggs per plant, probably it is too crowded and you need to have space things out a little more. So large and small, you also want to mix the grasses and nectar sources with the milkweeds. And a variety of nectar plants blooming from May to frost. I've said that where it's just really important to have them the whole time for the monarchs. You don't want them to leave on their winter trip hungry. Direct seeding milkweeds where possible is best. Many don't like to be transplanted. The common and swamp do okay, but a lot of them don't like to be transplanted. And I've learned that the hard way a few times. Some milkweeds can become large colonies of clones. So you got to kind of plan that. If you've got a big habitat area, that's fine. A small backyard, you're going to want to kind of watch how much of what you can put in there. And you can add milkweeds and native nectar plants to existing gardens too. Even if it's full of cultivars, don't worry about it. Put in some natives and native nectar plants and some milkweed. Then always make sure you have a safe place for the chrysalis to be hung, and you need shelter from the wind. And puddling spots are helpful too. And so this again, this is a unsolicited plug for these. Soil and water conservation departments sell shrubs, trees, and native plant kits. And this is one that Teresa helped with, and the Soil and Water Conservation Department in Rice County donated this to be planted along the conservation building at the fairgrounds. On the left, you can see the list of what is in there. The plants are really nice. So if you're looking to get started on something, it's a great way to get started on a pollinator garden. This happens to be the butterfly kit. And okay. A couple of examples of butterfly gardens that are great. And the one on the left is again Teresa's, and it's her photo and her garden. And she's got nice signs in there to tell people what's going on. You can see the milkweed and a variety of colors and things. So that should be good at attracting the monarchs. The one on the right was from a native garden tour we did, photo by Matt Brisky. And again, a variety of colors, and there were milkweeds there as well. Now, if you're looking for larger habitat suggestions, the one on the left on this one is Riverbend Nature Center. And note I think they're willows, but the shrubs behind it, it gives plenty of protection for the monarchs. And then there's milkweeds interspersed with many different kinds of flowering ones. On the right, Mud Creek Wildlife Management Area habitat. And this one, again, a wide variety of things. This is a beautiful WMA to go walk through if you want, pretty much any time of the summer. There's always things blooming, and plenty of milkweeds and just plenty of things blooming. And so there's some other ways to help monarchs. You can always check out your county, city, local parks, but before you do anything, get permission. Great resource is check your local garden clubs or the friends of groups with these places and see if they're doing anything or want to do something, and try to work with them to see what you can do to plant the milkweeds or pollinator plants. Roadside ditches can be yours. You want ones that are no mow. One of the things I think we all should be really careful is if we say no mow, no spray, that should be, then we're going to take care of those invasive species. I have to go back this afternoon and cut some buckthorn out of mine. We have no mow, but I saw some buckthorn as I left. So we should be responsible to take care of those, saying no mow. Do you have any friends, relatives in southern US using exotic milkweeds? Maybe you can explain just how detrimental that can be to monarchs, and hopefully they can get rid of it. Another way is helping from these natural areas, once you get approval, to get rid of invasives or collect and spread native seeds. One other last thing on it, there's a ballot on the November 5th when you go to vote that wants to extend the use of lottery funds for the next 25 years to continue to be given to the and natural resources. So if you don't click anything, it's a no vote. You can click yes, and that gives Minnesota the right to use some of that money to helping with these projects. Thank you all for your time. One quick thing, the bottom left is an oval milkweed, another milkweed, a really early bloomer. So thank you for your time. And I believe I turn it back over to Teresa now, and questions later.
Right. I'll go back to my presentation and we'll talk about, try this again.
This might be my next case.
Let's see. New share, we'll start there. I think that's what we had to do last time. Oh,
Yeah, it's up now, Teresa. We can see it.
okay. All right. Let's see if I hit the next slide though, if it'll. All right, are you seeing the new slide or not?
No, it's still saying shoreline restoration,
Okay.
helping pollinators right now.
We might have to do it this way again, unfortunately. But thanks so much, Barb. That was a wonderful presentation. I learned a ton. How fascinating the way milkweeds get pollinated. Amazing. So this is my house right here in my little pocket of prairie, and brings me great joy when I see monarchs visiting my site. So I'd like to just quickly share some of the different programs that are available to provide cost assistance. The first programs are for small sites, so you want to have a native garden right at your house. One of the most popular programs around right now is the Lawns to Legumes program through the Minnesota Board of Soil and Water Resources. It's a state program that will provide up to $400 in a mini cost share grant. So you pay for 25% of the costs associated with planting and site preparation of your native garden, and the state will provide 75% of the cost. So actually the deadline is coming up on November 30th to apply for the next funding for the next planting next spring. And I should add, for all of the programs I'm about to share, I'll be sending out a follow-up email. It'll have a recording of this webinar, and it'll have links to all these programs. So you'll be able to check out and apply if you would like to for these programs. So Lawns to Legumes, a really great program that a lot of people are taking advantage of. I mentioned before, the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization also has a native shoreline planting for those who live on lake shores. It's state funding, and it provides up to $500 per parcel for planting a minimum of 150 square foot native vegetation around the shoreline. And you develop a plan and submit that, and then that goes before the local SWCD board within the watershed. And if those are, the board will take a look at your proposal, and then they'll approve it, and then funding will come for you. You save all your receipts, as well as the Lawns to Legumes, all these programs, you need to save your receipts. And you have to apply for the program before planting and get approved first. So remember that as well. Another program, and Barb mentioned this, is just about every soil and water conservation district has a native plant program. So check with your local SWCD. You can also purchase plants outside your county, because all our plant programs are different. So different SWCDs have different kits. Some SWCDs have Monarch kits available that are specifically designed for monarchs. So you just have to check with those different districts. The plants usually arrive in late May or early June. And then we also have here at the Rice SWC, we have a native plant and contractor vendor list. So there's all kinds of nurseries across Minnesota that sell native plants. And then there are also contractors out there who will do the work for you if you're not able to do the planting. There are vendors out there who can do that for you, and we have a list put together of contractors and vendors from all across the state, and I will send that out in the follow-up email. Another thing to double check if you go with an outside vendor is verify, and I think Barb touched on this too, verify that the seed or the plant source is local. So you especially can see this sometimes with like seed specifically. It'll get marketed as wildflower seed, and so you really got to be careful. It's not wildflowers from like California or something like that. So double check that they're indeed Minnesota natives. And for your native plants, or even cultivars, if you're going to use them, make sure they're neonicotinoid free. That's a pesticide that is often used in nurseries, and that can kill our native pollinators. And it can last in the plant for a couple, 2-3 years in some cases. So it's always good to check about that. Finally, there's a lot of native plant sales in the spring too at farmers markets. I think Wild One has one. In Faribault, the city of Faribault here, the Grows chapter has one. The Master Gardeners have one. The only thing I think we need to start becoming aware of is the chance of spreading jumping worms. That's my only concern. A jumping worm is an invasive worm that's starting to move across Minnesota, and we just need to be vigilant that you don't want to end up with jumping worms in your gardens. So keep that in mind as you're purchasing plants. Couple other programs. This is for like a medium planting. The Butterfly and Bee Habitat Fund is a nonprofit organization. This is for acres from 2 to 25 acres. It's a 5-year, and they provide technical assistance to do everything, and they provide the seed at no cost. So I'll send a link for that. There's several federal farm programs. So if you have a farm, if you have large acreages, this can help you. If you wanted to completely change a farm field and revert it back to prairie, the Conservation Reserve Program or Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program could work for that. These are 10, 15, 30-year easements, and with CREP, it's actually a permanent easement, so you get paid either an annual rental rate, or with the permanent easement, it can be a lump sum for the part of the value of the land to not farm on it anymore or build on it, but to keep it in native prairie. There's also the Resources Conservation Service, which is part of the federal USDA program. They also have a program called Monarch Butterfly Conservation on Working Lands, and they have a priority area. So there are, again, several other conservation programs available that has special practices and money available for helping pollinators and planting habitat for the monarch butterfly. And I know it's a lot of programs, but generally what we say is we always tell people to contact your local SWCD, and staff there is available. They can talk to you about your land, what you have available, and they can help you find the best conservation program that can potentially fill your needs the best, and have a conversation about it. And the final thing I wanted to just plug is the Be a Dot on the Map program here in the city of Faribault. Area residents, it's open to. You can receive this pollinator habitat sign that promotes pollinator habitat and encourages your neighbors to plant native. So far here in Faribault, there's around 20 native gardens that are on the Be a Dot on the Map program. So we might have some Q&As. We better get to that. Let's see. The first question from Catherine says, I planted 1.5 acres of native wildflowers about 4 years ago, and I would like to add some additional native wildflowers. Can and how can I overseed that area? Let's see. Well, I think what I would say is we would probably come out and take a look at that area and find where those areas are that would be the best spots to interseed. And maybe that would mean, mechanically trying to, if there's spots in your native planting where it's a monoculture of one plant that's growing, we would probably work to take some of those plants out, and then we could seed into them or plant into them.
I would say, yeah, and timing can be important on it. Either do it in the fall after a freeze and the plants have died down. A lot of arboretums and things will gather the seed and they will just go out there and spread it underneath the other plants or died or in the early. And as Teresa was mentioning some, I mean, if you do cut down some of the other ones and give it space to grow, that can help too, but timing can be important.
Another thing you might want to consider, if it's 1.5 acres, is it possible that you could burn it?
Yeah.
If you would burn it, you could do that in the fall or in the spring, and then you could broadcast some seed in, different areas as well.
Yep, that would be good.
Okay, the next question. Barb recommended resources. Is University of Minnesota good for milkweed species and companion plants?
University of Minnesota is good. They will have some things. Xerxes, XERXES is a wonderful resource. What I could do is send a few things to Teresa, then she can send it out with her email to people. Other places, if you're from Minnesota, Prairie Moon Seed Company, all native plants, and they're excellent for resources. And you can look at the milkweeds that they offer. They're out of some of them, but you can look at what they have to offer, and they'll give you a lot of detailed information on them. The companion plants, I'm not sure that there's any certain ones you need for most of the milkweed species. Pretty much any of the native plants go well, but I think Prairie Moon does have some things listed. I'll try to get some resources listed and sent to Teresa.
Okay, we have another question down here. I just need to scroll down. Okay. Okay, next, how can we join the Be a Dot program in Steele County? I know that there is I can't think of their name. There is a local pollinator group in Steele County. I don't know if they have the same type of program, but I think they do. I think they have their own sign that they use to promote natives in their area. So I do know representatives from that group, so I can send that along in the follow-up email. Okay. Teresa writes, I tagged monarchs this year through Monarch Watch. Is this a good thing to do? I'm worried about the tag on the wing.
Everybody, or a lot of people, and I did too at first, kind of worry about that looking like a big bulky thing on the wing, but it is done by a lot of science organizations, and a lot of people are approved and trained to do it. Supposedly it doesn't hurt them. I worry more about the infections that they get actually than the tag. A lot of the tagged ones do make it down to Mexico. So I can't tell you for sure if it's a problem or not, but everything I understand, it's not, if they do it correctly.
Okay, any other questions? Let's see. Okay, how can I get the Be a Dot on the map sign? Again, that's through, if you live in the Faribault area, it's through the Partners for Pollinators group. And you can just send me your information, or I can send a link out to the contact information with that in the follow-up email. All right, any other questions? Oh, here we go. We maybe got one more. Okay. Virginia writes, the majority of residential property is designated as wetland. In which building or cutting is not allowed? Can we plant native plants in this wetland?
Yes. There are native plants, and swamp milkweed is one, but there are native plants that do well in wetlands. Again, there's different places that you can get some information on them. I mentioned Prairie Moon because they have a wonderful search feature, and you can put in their wet soils and things and find some that you might be interested in. But definitely you can do it. Cutting, do you mean cutting for taking flowers is not allowed, or you cannot cut the plants back ever? Can you do any burning? I don't know how wet it is, but if you have any more questions or detail, perhaps if you have Teresa's information, you can send it to her, and I can give her inputs too if she wants. I'm not quite sure exactly what you're looking for, but there are native plants for wetlands.
I think I'll add, there is a law in Minnesota called the Wetland Conservation Act of 1991, which says you can't drain or fill a wetland.
It has
So,
wetland plant.
but yeah, you could plant wetland plants into there if you wanted to, again, increase the diversity of the vegetation in that wetland. A lot of the district SWCD native plant programs have rain garden kits. And so you could, which rain garden kit plants are designed for wetter areas. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that you could, it's fine to, like, if you want to try to get some milkweed, you know, some different wet plants, more diversity in that wetland, that would be okay. As long as you're not filling it or changing the water direction, that kind of stuff, you should be okay.
There's some Biden's marigolds and things that are good around wetlands and things. And again, you're not too far away from the Mud Creek wildlife management area, which is about a mile north of the Fireside Apple Orchard. If you go there and look, they have a wetland, and they do have quite a few species there that are doing great in the wetland area.
Yeah. Okay, she says here that we can't cut down the willows.
Willows are great for pollinators.
Well, that's good. I don't know if you heard Barb, right? I don't know if you heard Barb there, but she said that willows are great for pollinators. My screen is cutting out a little bit, so hopefully you're getting this. Let's look at the
But they
chat.
may be taking over too much and they want to cut them back. I guess that would be the law thing. That would be your end to know more about.
Well, let's see, it is 1:07 and we want to be respectful of your time, so thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Ryan, for hosting and getting this together. For us, our next webinar will be Tuesday, November 19th. And we'll have Dr. Anna Cates from the University of Minnesota Office of Soil Health. And she'll be here to talk about mycorrhizal fungi, the powerhouse behind soil health. So it should be a really great presentation. So thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks Teresa. Thanks Barb for all that. We appreciate all the great information that you guys passed along, and thanks for answering all the questions and everything. So yeah, we look forward to the next one.
Sounds great.
All right. Bye.
Bye.